Hi everyone. Today we're going to be making a cauliflower and potato soup. I'm showing you the size of the vegetables so that you know roughly what I'm working with. You can adjust the portions to your liking. It doesn't necessarily have to be what I'm using, but this is a this is a particular ratio that's worked for me before, so I'm gonna stick with it. So there's an onion like that's about that big, about half a head of garlic, head of cauliflower that's kind of that big. I don't know, and then potatoes that are roughly the same amount of what cauliflower is. And that's pretty much it. So ratio wise, it's sort of like one onion to like, I don't know, four potatoes to four cauliflowers to, half a head of garlic, and you'll be fine. Adjust this up and down as you need, but you know, add more onion or add more garlic. This is your life. I'm not telling you how to live it. So I'm going to switch to the camera that can show you my chopping of the vegetables. Okay, so I'll be right back. Are we on? Are we on? Yes, we're on. Okay, good. So I actually wanted to show you how I'm going to be chopping these vegetables because I haven't really covered too terribly much of it. So I'll just go over it quickly, and then hopefully you guys get an idea of how easy this can go. So I just cut my onion, took off the top and bottom of it, and then just cut it in half lengthwise. And rather than worrying about getting only the dry skin, I just take off that first layer, I guess, and it comes right off, so I'm not sitting here and fiddling with this onion for way too long. And the trick with onions is to get them done with as fast as you can, because that way they don't make you cry. So I am cutting them crosswise first, and then cutting them the other way. They don't need to be dainty and perfect. As long as they're the same size, you're fine. So that's me done with the onion. Then for the garlic, I need to get all the skin off of that garlic. So I'm just gonna give it a quick crush. And it already starts to pop off a lot of the skin, so great. And the skin comes off fairly easily once if it's being stubborn, just give it a light crush with your knife and the skin will start coming off. And that actually gives me the shortcut to the next step, which is just to crush the garlic. I'm not even going to chop it, I'm just going to crush it, because at the end I'm going to be able to, it's going to cook down longer, so it's not going to have as sharp of a garlic bite. But that means then that if it didn't get crushed, I don't know, just chop it in half lengthwise, that's fine. So let's see, get you crushed, let's just crush them all at once, and then we'll take the paper off and get the pot onto the stove so that these guys can start cooking. And that's kind of the point of why I wanted to show you how I'm chopping the vegetables too, because I wanted to give you sort of a door-to-door kind of experience where you can see, really how long it does take when you're able to schedule your tasks in such a way that you're not chopping everything all at once and then waiting for stuff to happen. If you're kind of managing your time wisely, you get these quick preliminary steps done very quickly, get them on the stove to park, and then come back and chop the other vegetables and then get them on the stove. So meet me back at the stove and we'll get this guy going. So here we are back at the stove, and it's time to get these onion and garlic guys, getting in there with some oil. I have found that if I preheat the stove on high for about 15-20 seconds or so that it gets hot, I can actually dump the garlic and onions directly into there without adding any oil at all, and it'll be fine. Because I just need to get these guys translucent. I don't need them to be browned or anything. I just need to get them cooked. I'd like to maintain the color as much as possible. However, I am going to add some oil because I like the flavor of oil in a soup. But because I've added the onion first, I don't have to add quite as much oil as I would if I did not add the onion first. So these guys are gonna, they're gonna cook for a while. I'm going to let them park in here for a couple of minutes I'm actually not going to leave them right now. I just want to keep an eye on them so that they don't get burned or, you know, overcooked or undercooked. In the back, I have a pot of water boiling so that when it's time to add water to the soup, I can just dump that straight in and not have to worry about, you know, waiting for the water to come to a boil if I add cold water into here. So it's a strategy that I use often when I'm making soup, is that before I start anything, I just get a separate pot of water to boil so that it can kind of hang out. Now, I don't know if you can notice, but let me lift this off the stove so that you can take a look. The onions are starting to get translucent around the edges. And they're not as opaque as they were before, so that's good. That's something that I'm looking for. So now I can actually turn down the heat. I don't know, 2.5, 3, something like that, and cover the lid. And I'm just gonna let this park here and, you know, get softened while I chop the rest of the vegetables. So let's go. Hi everyone, welcome back. So we're going to start chopping the vegetables now. The order that I'm doing it in is the order that it's going to go into the pot. So if you noticed I started with the onion first, it's because the onions are the first thing to go into the pot. So I'd like to just get them out of the way so that I can, you know, move on with the rest of it. So the potatoes are going to go in before the cauliflower because the cauliflower takes less time to cook. So here we go. I'm just going to give them like a quick, I don't know. I don't want the pieces too small because then there's something about a soup with vegetables that are too tiny and perfect and precise that it's just not as comforting to eat as one with, like, I don't know, like chunks. I want there to be something that you can sink your teeth into. So I'm not trying to get these guys into a tiny dice. I'm just trying to get them about like that big, give or take. So I'd say like it's about the length of my thumb. Sorry, not even the length of the first segment of my thumb. So they're smallish pieces. There we go. The potato is the length of the first segment of my index finger. So it's not tiny, but it's not huge either. It's going to be easy to eat. And I'm actually slowing down my chopping because I'm trying to talk and chop at the same time, and I don't want to cut myself. And because I know most people don't chop as fast as I do when I'm going full tilt. So I don't want you guys to be, thinking, oh, he's able to make it this fast because he's been cooking for such a long time and he's chopping so fast. But I figured I'd slow it down for a bit, so that you guys can follow along, sort of thing. I think it would be fun if you had this video playing while you were making the soup as well, so that it's almost like we're cooking together, which I know I have done before with some of my favorite YouTube chefs. I'll watch the recipe in its entirety so I know what to expect, but then I'll flip it on as sort of like background noise while I'm cooking. It helps. I don't know, when you're cooking by yourself, sometimes it can be a little lonely. So feeling like you have someone else in the kitchen with you, sort of talking to you and hanging out is kind of a nice feeling. So here we go. That's the last potato. Okay, so these are almost done. And finally, it's the cauliflower. And really, I could add other vegetables if I wanted. I don't have to just stop at potatoes and cauliflower. But there's something about this particular combination that I very, very much like. So when I make this particular soup, I just make it with potato and cauliflower because I feel like it doesn't really need anything. But if you have any dark leafy greens that you like, you're more than welcome to add them. Broccoli, never hurt anything. Some kale, some collard greens, whatever you have lying around, spinach, like, it's fine. Use what you have so that you can make this to your liking. But sort of, I like the simplicity of just those two vegetables going in there and not really having to worry about sorting out anything else. I wanted to show you like the simplest version of these things so that when you make it, you can customize it to your liking. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to get rid of these outer green leaves, and I'm going to try to get the core out of here so that I can take off the rough skin on the outside and use it, because I do indeed want to use as much of the cauliflower as I can, because the vegetable is fairly expensive. As of late, I want to say in the last few years, it's gotten a bit pricey, and I'm not sure that I buy it very often. So, like, yeah, I know there are Indian preparations of cauliflower that involve a bunch of spices, but for this particular cauliflower, because it is so small, I wanted to kind of stretch it out with the potatoes and with the onion and the garlic, and I'm gonna add some coconut milk to this whole thing once the soup is formed. So if you can see, I just cut off the outside rough parts of the core, but this is still usable, so don't throw this out. And I'm going to chop that into small pieces. And the cauliflower, really, I don't even have to chop it. I can just break it up with my hands if I want to. So I guess I'll do that. I'm looking for fairly small pieces of cauliflower because I want to get a little bit of each biteful of food that I take to have some cauliflower in it. But you can make it whatever size you want. It just depends on what stage of the cooking that you're going to add the cauliflower. So, if you do decide to make them into bigger pieces, you're going to want to add them earlier on in the cooking. In fact, if you make them very large pieces, you can even add them at the same time as the potatoes, and everything will get done at the same time. So that's not going to hurt anything at all. But I'm making them into smallish pieces because I do want to have a little bit of cauliflower in each bite, and I want to have the potatoes be sort of like the backbone of the soup, so that they're the ones that are holding down the fort, so to speak, and the cauliflower is kind of like the star attraction kind of thing. So this should go fairly quickly if you're working on such a small cauliflower like I am. This shouldn't take too terribly long at all. And all this time, the onions are sizzling away in the pot, so we're going to go visit them in a second once this cauliflower is done. So let me get that in there. Good. Again, it doesn't need to be perfect. Work with this as you will. We're almost done. Come on, last few pieces. There we go. There. Okay. This last piece. Cut that in half. So visit me back at the stove, and we're going to get this soup on the road. So, of course, there are going to be technical difficulties at certain times. While I was in the process of showing you how to get the potatoes into the pot, that particular clip got lost on my phone, so I'll just walk you through it. Essentially, on the back burner, I had a small pot with water already boiling, and on the front burner, I had the large stock pot that had the onions and the garlic and the oil. Then I threw in about, I want to say, 2/3 of the potatoes, maybe about half. I don't remember the exact amounts, but I set aside some of the potatoes to boil in the little tiny pot in the back, and I did the rest of them with the onions and garlic. And you just need enough water to just barely cover them. They don't need much water at all because I'm going to be adding coconut milk later on. So you don't need to add like a huge quantity of water. I took some of the boiling water from the back burner and just threw it into the front one because I really needed that one to get cooked all the way through. The back burner, I wanted to make sure that those potatoes maintained their texture. So what I did is that I put the diced potatoes into the pot and poured cold water over them and put them onto the back burner to come up to a boil. Now, this is important because when when the shape and the texture of the potatoes is important and you're not worried about time, but you really need them to like maintain that perfect little cube shape that you've cut them into, that's when you want to do the cold water that you bring up to the boil with the potatoes in them, you know, and then drop it down to a simmer and let it cook all the way through. Um, that makes sure that your potatoes maintain that texture all the way through. If you just need the potatoes to be done, because you're going to puree them or you're going to do some other, you know, like mash them or, you know, do something else to them, it does not matter if you know, if you start with hot water or throw them into boiling water or throw boiling water on top of them. The boiling water will obviously come to that full rushing boil a lot faster than if you start with cold water and let them come up together to temperature. I don't know why it is that it works that way, but it's something that I've noticed over time. And because I want those potatoes in the back to maintain that texture, I'm starting them with cold water, and they're going to come up to the boil. Because what I'm going to do is that the potatoes and actually even the cauliflower that happens in the front burner, that the one in the big stock pot, that one I'm going to puree all the way down to like a smooth, creamy situation in the blender. So since everything in there is getting pureed anyway, this is why I didn't really care about like getting the onions like into a perfect dice or even chopping the garlic, because I knew after I cooked everything I'm going to puree the whole thing down anyway. So I didn't have to sit here and worry about, is it all looking perfect? Is it all, you know, evenly sized? No, that's my mistake. That's the only thing. Evenly sized is more important than small. As long as everything is the same size. So, like, supposing you have, let's say, onions, potatoes, and cauliflower, like we do in this case. Every piece of onion needs to be roughly the same size. Every piece of potato needs to be roughly the same size. And every piece of cauliflower needs to be roughly the same size. Now, because I'm adding them in different steps and I'm not cooking everything all together all at once, it doesn't matter what that size is. It just matters that each vegetable is the same size. Otherwise, you're going to get inconsistent cooking, and it's going to be very, like, some pieces are going to be overdone, some pieces are going to be underdone, and it's going to be very unpleasant. So as long as the sizes are consistent across the same vegetable, you're good. So since I knew that the onion is not going to end up whole in the final product, I went ahead and just chopped it kind of roughly just to get it done and throw it in the pot. And the same thing goes for that garlic. Is I knew that I'm going to puree this whole thing down, you know, to a smooth puree. So I wasn't bothered about, you know, chopping the garlic or mincing it or doing much of anything. I literally just cut it in half lengthwise. If the crushing that I did to remove the skin didn't actually split it in half lengthwise. So that's why I did things that way. Later on in this video, you're going to see me take the potatoes out of that back pot and put them into like a bowl to set aside. I mentioned later in that particular clip that I'm not salting the water. The reason is I already salted the water for boiling the potatoes and I'm using the same water. I just forgot to mention that. So I'm sorry about having to interrupt showing you what's actually going on in the pot and just, you know, show you my face instead. But for some reason, when I put it on the phone, you know, it didn't take. Maybe I pressed the wrong button. I don't know. These things happen. But I still wanted to have this video out for you guys, so I hope you'll forgive me. Thanks. Okay, so the front potatoes are boiling away like mad, so I'm going to drop down the heat to like medium-low and just kind of let them park in there for a while. The back potatoes haven't quite caught up yet, so they're still parking. But they're getting there. They're going to start boiling rather quickly, so it's Bear in mind that I started off with hot water on this one, and I started off with cold water on this one. So that one's most definitely going to take a little bit longer to come up to heat, but that's okay. It's fine. All will be right at the end. So once that comes up to a rushing boil, like you saw this guy doing, I'm going to drop that one down to a medium-low as well and let that park until it's done. Roughly, I don't know, 20, 25 minutes or so should do it. I'll check them at 15 and see where it goes and keep you guys posted. So join me. We'll see we'll see where this goes. Okay, be right back. So not even 2 minutes after I got off the camera, the potatoes in the back started coming to a full rushing boil. So I have dropped them down to low heat because the small pot made it so that they were boiling too rapidly. So I didn't want any blowouts on these potatoes. I don't mind if these guys have blowouts. So I just want these guys to be cooked, so I'm not fussed. Now, I could sense your disbelief that there were no spices in this recipe, but fear not. Fear not, we have spices. This is granulated onion powder, this is granulated garlic powder, and this is some black pepper that I've ground in my pepper grinder. It looks to be that they're all about like a half a teaspoon of each one. You don't have to add the onion or the garlic powder because we do have onion and garlic in here. It's just to boost the flavor, that's all. You don't have to add it though. I might even just leave out the garlic powder because I did put half a head of garlic in here and taste at the end and adjust with this stuff. But let's try it without first and just add the onion powder and the pepper. The reason I'm adding it while the soup is still hot is that I want the dried granulated onion to rehydrate completely and kind of incorporate itself with the soup. So I'm doing that with the pepper as well for the same reason. I want everything to get nice and incorporated. It might seem like there's not very much liquid in here to cover both the potatoes and the cauliflower, but fear not, we're going to adjust that as well. Just going to give this a quick taste to make sure that it's doing what I want it to do, so that if I have to adjust anything, I could go and adjust anything. This is going to taste a lot more salty than it really should, and this is also going to taste a lot more garlicky and a lot more oniony than it should because I just added extra onion powder on top of it all. But without the addition of anything, I mean, it's already turning into a nice looking broth, so I'm not mad at that. Oh, that's delicious. I think it can take the garlic powder. I think it can take it. So I'm just going to put that in there and let it rehydrate and get incorporated. And poke one of these potatoes. Are we there yet? Alright, so this is about at 15 minutes. They seem to be breaking apart, so I think these are done, which means that the back potatoes should be coming right along, and they should probably be done in a minute or 2 or 5. But let's find out. Oh, they're done! Woo! That was surprisingly quick. So I'm going to turn these guys off for now. I'm going to add some cauliflower in here to get them cooked. They're also going to help thicken up the soup, so I'm not going to... I'm gonna grind these up too, so they're also going to get pureed. I'm going to crank up the heat a little bit to bring it back to a boil, because the cauliflower shouldn't take very long, maybe 5-10 minutes or so, that should be plenty. But time for me to get the hot water from here onto the cauliflower so that I can get these guys like just cooked all the way through. It's not easy to do one-handed, folks. I'll pick those out later, don't worry about it. See, like if I had both my hands, I would, just put the lid on there and strain the water through. But I don't have both my hands because one of them is holding this camera. So it goes back there. Let me pick out these little potato pieces so that they don't wind up in the soup. 1 second. They are done though, and they're really hot. So come on, potatoes, behave. Work with me here. We can do this. Okay. Hey, go away, cauliflower. You're not invited to that party. So we have... Oh, come on. You know what? I don't care if a couple of potatoes end up in here, but if they... Yes, I do. I want this to be done right. Come on. There we go. that's the last of it. There's a tiny couple of pieces of cauliflower fillet in there. It's fine. It's not going to hurt anything. So then I'm going to take these guys and dump them into that pot and crank the heat so that they can get cooked as well. I wanted to show you that method of removing something from its boiling water and reusing that boiling water by doing it in that method, because I find it a lot easier than using like a slotted spoon or something to scoop them out. I find it a lot easier to just like dump out the water over whatever it is that I'm trying to do, then dump out the product into another bowl, and then just get this guy back on the stove. And he's happily going to start boiling away. This guy is coming along, so let's just give him a quick stir. It smells really good. It smells really, really good. I'm very pleased with myself right now. So this is going to come to a boil. I would say that they cooked maybe for like 10-15 minutes or so total. Check them at like 8 minutes, because these guys are being really sneaky. I've sometimes had potatoes where I had to boil them for like a half hour to get tender enough. But these guys, I turned my back for like 2 minutes to, measure out spices, and all of a sudden they're done. So I'm watching you, potatoes. I see what you're up to. I see your little tricks. So that's coming up to a boil. So I'm just going to drop that down to, I don't know, I guess a 2. And then this guy can sort of bubble away for, I don't know, 5 minutes or so, 6 minutes. I'll check it at 3 minutes and see what happens, because everything seems to be moving at lightning pace today. Now that you guys are watching, everything wants to behave itself and show off. So we'll be back. I'm not going to salt the cauliflower water back here because it doesn't really need it too much. It's just those really heavily starchy vegetables that need that salt early on. I can always adjust that one's salt. So I'm going to go clean up after myself and go fetch the coconut milk and get everything ready for you guys so we can make the magic happen when it's done. Be right back. Okay, so of course what happened is that the cauliflower in the back is cooked first. It's cooked to where I want it. Ooh, that's hot. Let me put this on a thing so you can see what it looks like. So it has changed in color. Let me focus. There we go. It's changed in color. It's no longer that bright white anymore. It's gone kind of like translucenty. Give you more light. There we go. See how it's a little bit more translucent than it was before. It's changed in texture. It is cooked. It's not mushy. Oh, that's tasty. There's still some crunch to it, but it is soft. So this guy's done. The cauliflower in here, I'm going to need to cook a little bit more because I do want it to get pureed all the way down. So I am going to take this one all the way down to not mush, but I want it cooked all the way through. I don't want to have any retaining crunch left on this cauliflower in here, because I want it to, when I blitz it in the blender, I want it to completely fall apart. So I'm actually going to save some of that water over there for thinning out the soup if I need to. And this right here is where the rest of the liquid should be coming from. There's about 2 cups of coconut milk. You can add less. It'll still be fine, but I like a creamy soup to be creamy. I want it to have some of that richness. So I'm going to go ahead and add that coconut milk at the end to just stir it through and make everything lovely. Now, if you don't want to use quite so much coconut milk because it is so high in fat, what you can do is get anywhere between, 10 and 14 ounces of tofu. I use firm because that's what I keep around in my house, but you can use whatever you have, it's fine. And blend it in the blender with the coconut milk until the tofu is completely pureed. You want absolutely no texture left. Put it through a strainer so that you don't have any chunks left, and it'll boost the creaminess without having to add all that fat. So I might just do it anyway to just add the extra protein, but up to you. If you don't have tofu, you can also use a can of white beans. They do the same thing. It'll make it more creamy without adding extra fat. So depending on what you have lying around, go ahead and use that. If you do use the white beans, I like Great Northern beans or cannellini beans or those little mini white beans. Those are really nice. You want to rinse and drain them of all that gooey stuff that they have on there. Otherwise, it's going to be too thin. It's not going to get thick enough. So you combine 1 cup of coconut milk with 1 can of rinsed and drained white beans, and it'll do the same thing. Or 1 cup of coconut milk with, like, I don't know, a block of tofu or half a block of tofu, thereabouts. I am gonna add the tofu this time, though. I do want to boost the protein on this guy because with all that richness, I want something to keep me full longer. You don't have to do it. I'm just doing it because I have some tofu left over from last night that I haven't used yet. So I'll be back. I'll be back once this cauliflower is cooked. And of course, because one of the clips got deleted from the phone, of course, there was more than one that got deleted from the phone. So here's the final product. I'm recording this after the fact because I didn't realize that the clip got deleted until I was starting to process the videos and put them together. Clip is lost forever. But here's how it turned out. So the texture is very creamy. I added some corn, some frozen corn that I had just because I like the taste of corn. It's one of the happiest vegetables ever. And I pureed what was in here, and I had the cauliflower and the potatoes that I had boiled separately sat in there. Then when this guy got pureed all the way through, I went ahead and dumped him back into the pot, and then added those vegetables in, and then added the coconut cream, plus tofu into here, gave it all a quick stir. I tested it for salt, and it was fine. It had enough salt for my liking, but you always want to taste at the end of a soup to make sure that the salt is where you want it, because if you taste it at the beginning, it's going to be a little bland. You want to wait for the whole thing to finish cooking before you taste it for salt. So it came out really well. I'm very happy with it. I'm just sorry I couldn't show you the actual clip of my cooking it. It's really irritating. I'm still learning this whole thing, so I'm bound to make mistakes. I'm surprised that this is the worst of the mistakes that I've made thus far. So thank you for joining me, and I will see you next time. Bye.